Hello, and welcome to the Second Annual PODY Awards. Introducing your hosts, Sam and Honor.
Woo.
Hello. Hi. We're back.
We're back.
Honor, are you excited to be celebrating the Second Annual PODY Awards? Now been going on for close to 200 years. It's a big day, probably the biggest day of the year, most people would say. And I'm excited, Honor, because we're going to talk about the biggest podcast of the year, our biggest podcast, the worst podcast objectively rated by science and medicine. And it's all going to happen, Honor, on this episode of Podpodcastcast. Hello, and welcome to Podpodcastcast. I'm Sam.
And I'm Honor.
What a special introduction, Honor,
for a special episode.
It's a special episode. It's fantastic. This is a podcast where we talk about other podcasts, and today we're excited as the year winds down, brings to a close a wonderful year, 2025, the year that was. We're going to sum it up in terms of podcasts. What are the important podcasts that we've talked about? What has been near and dear to our earbuds? And also a little bit what we wish we never would have heard.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking our POTTYs, which obviously Honor stands for
Podcast of the Year.
Thank you, Honor. And we'll also be talking about our POTTYs, which I had forgotten what they were called, what POTTY stood for. So, Honor, if you could play the clip from last year.
Well, so here's the thing, is you said at least 3 different things for what it stood for. It's a constantly changing and evolving acronym.
And thank you, Honor, for playing the clip. Because it was always consistent, and it was always just that, whatever the thing that I just said was. I believe it was podcast, that there's yucky. I believe that was what POTTY stood for.
That's at least one of them, yeah.
Yeah. Podcast of the Year is our favorite podcast from the year. And our POTTY, which I don't know if we should have that same toilet flushing sound. Really the most feedback we've ever gotten on a piece of Podpodcastcast is how long that toilet flushing sound was for the POTTY Award. It seemed relevant. It seemed valuable to me.
Yeah.
But POTTY obviously is the worst podcast that we reviewed this year.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be going over both of those, and then we'll do a little quick Podpodcastcast Wrapped. We'll tell you what we got out of this year, what's some interesting things about Podpodcastcast, and then we'll send you on your merry way into the winter holidays, New Year's, and a bright, beautiful listening future beyond.
Yeah.
Does that sound good, Honor?
Yeah, sounds great.
Perfect. Honor, are you ready with your POTTY and your PODY?
Oh, I'm so ready.
That almost felt like a threat.
Oh, it was. It was a threat.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I love to be threatened, so let's just dive in headfirst. So we're going to go our top 3 favorite podcasts from this past year, culminating in our POTTY, our podcast of the year. We'll do 3 and 2, and then we'll take a break, do our POTTY, and then come back to our number 1. Honor, do you want to start us off with your 3rd favorite podcast for the year? I'm on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. Sam, I think you're probably going to be happy about this one.
Oh?
And it might be a little bit of a surprise, but my 3rd ranked podcast of the year is Mall Walkin' from Pistol Shrimps Radio.
Oh, yes! Oh,
yeah.
Major win. That is huge for the program. Oh, that is so exciting to see. Oh, I love that.
Number 1, surprise, there's a nonfiction podcast on my top 3.
Which, as we've discussed, really it shows your bias when you refer to them as nonfiction podcasts.
Yeah.
So I think this breaking in the top 3 is, I have to say, utterly a delight to me. Well, because I recommended this podcast to you. I said,
you did.
Honor, I've listened to this podcast that is unlike any other pod I've ever heard, which these guys walk around a mall and record themselves. And what's your rationale here? Because I'm so excited. I'm over the moon. Why did this break into your top 3?
My rationale here is a very simple and happy one, which is just that it's one of the podcasts that I had the most fun listening to. And while I was listening to it, I wanted to listen to more of it. It's a great pod. It's well produced. Like, it's not like there was anything earth-shattering going on. I do think it's a fun new angle on podcasting, having it be more of a, you know, exploring the world thing, just getting out there and documenting experiences and commenting on sort of everyday facets of life in ways that are, you know, humorous, but also like, yeah, it's almost like taking a second to appreciate, you know, whatever shoe store or abandoned creepy hallway they were looking at.
Yeah, and I also think there's an element of like the fiction podcast that you love so much, there's an element of danger and suspense. Will they get thrown out of this Macy's? You don't know. You have to sit through the next 5 minutes while they like cowardly go through the women's clothing section trying not to get spotted.
This is true.
Yeah, no, I really do wonder if this format for podcast of I feel like we need to like coin the term. I almost want to call it IRL podcast, like in real life, but that feels silly.
I was going to say like a walk-in pod.
A walk-in pod? Sure. Yeah.
Which I also think would be a good homage to, you know, mall walk-in. I think they deserve to have a reference in the coined name of the genre.
In the literature. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
No, that's fantastic. No, I really wonder, and I've said this on the podcast several times, if this will catch on, and because I think it's really fascinating. I think it's also, you know, because one of the things people like about podcasts is that it's natural, you know, like it's just people talking, right? But it is still very unnatural in the way that most podcasts are recorded, where we're like sitting people down at a table, you know, and they have to like be casual. You know, not that that's not a way people do things, but I just wonder if, you know, people, like, we talk in all kinds of other environments. So I wonder if there will be more podcasts like this, you know. I think of my Sans Pants Radio. They have, they record some of their podcasts in the car, which I am greatly amused by. So I just wonder, I don't know. I wonder how far this will go and if this will catch on or if it'll always stay a niche or if it'll die. Who knows?
Yeah.
But Honor, you've made my POTTY Awards by saying mall walking is your top.
I thought I would.
I'll confess right now, mall walking is an honorable mention for me, but it did not break my top 3.
Wow. That's wild.
Well, because I was looking through, you know, all the podcasts that we reviewed this year. We reviewed so many podcasts and so many good podcasts.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
And I'll kind of say this, you know, to start. I don't know if the podcast for this year quite hit like the heights from last year. Like I still loved Dust Chrysalis. You know, listener, if you don't know what that is, go listen to the first episode. Maybe don't do that. It's a little rough. But you know, I still love that podcast tremendously.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of good podcasts this year. So my number 3 podcast of the year is Wooden Overcoats.
Ooh, yeah.
Good pod, right? Good pod.
Good pod.
Wooden Overcoats, of course, being a fiction podcast, a little narrative audio drama about people that live on the island of Piffling Vale and a cast of characters that are involved in the funeral home business. You know, I think Wooden Overcoats is a good show, and I think I said as much during our review. It's good. I enjoy it. It's fun. It has kind of this dark humor that is you know, is a good time. But I think more than anything, really, why this is my top 3 podcast is, you know, maybe Stockholm Syndrome. That sounds a little harsh, but, you know, I listened to all 4 seasons of the show, and it's like any, you know, book series or TV show that you've watched a lot of. I think you just kind of get comfortable with the characters and with the setting, and after a while they become familiar, you know, and cozy, right? And you're like, well, I just want to see how Madeline, the funeral house mouse, is how she's doing, what her next book is going to be like, right? And you just kind of, you really get invested in those characters. And even if it's, you know, the show is pretty good and it has an ending, which God bless them, I love an ending.
You really do.
And I think the ending is fine. And I think in general, the show is good. I don't think there's many individual episodes that I would say, this is standout audio drama work, you know, like this is, you know, I don't know that I would ever say that one episode comes to mind. I say, oh, you have to listen to this, right? If you listen to none of the rest of it, you have to listen to this. I don't know that I feel that way about Wooden Overcoats, but I would say that if you are somebody that likes, an audio drama and wants one to listen to for just a little while, I think you'll find yourself getting comfortable with Wooden Overcoats, and I think you'll have a pretty good time with it, and it won't ask very much of you. It won't ask you to solve a mystery. It won't ask you to get really stressed out about some like horror element. It's just you're kind of along for the ride, and you're like, gosh, they're up to their old antics again.
Yeah.
And I think it's good. So I think that's probably breaks in at number 3 for me. A side note is that this is also partially on here because it introduced me to Crowley Time, which is a podcast by one of the actors whose name is Tom Crowley, which is another crazy podcast that is like it's a skits podcast and
sketch comedy,
which I was greatly amused by. That is sketch comedy. They've done it. They've put it into audio. We're done. Do we need to do anything else with society? We've peaked. Which good podcast. I wouldn't say is my top 3, but Wooden Overcoats got me there, which is an added plus for Wooden Overcoats.
Yeah. I am really proud of you for, thinking so positively of a podcast that you think is long. First of all, proud of you. But also, I think this wasn't necessarily a recommendation from me, but if I remember correctly, it was a recommendation from you for us to review because you really thought I would like it. Which you were very right. It's very up my alley of like a sort of dark, spooky narrative thing. But now it's ended up on your number 3. I really feel like we've swapped brands a little bit for our number 3.
Maybe.
Which is just showing how we've slowly been like infecting one another over the, 2-ish years we've been doing this podcast.
Really? I think infecting is perhaps the most negative word. I think growing, evolving, progressing.
But is it inaccurate?
Well, okay. I think at the surface level, right, you might think, oh, these podcasts, Mall Walking doesn't sound like an honor podcast, and Wooden Overcoats doesn't sound like a Sam podcast. But I think when you dig down, I think you enjoy some silly guys talking from time to time. And that's what Mall Walking hits for you. And it's a weird niche of a format that you also enjoy. And Wooden Overcoats may seem like a spooky, macabre thing, but, really, it's kind of pleasant. It's like just a nice little village. And I'm like, oh, go live in my British village. Hooray, And that's all I want.
Yeah.
Just give me a little British village. That's all I want.
That's all Sam wants. No, I think you're right. I just think it's a beautiful little bridging of our brands in this number 3 slot.
That's true. It's a beautiful number 3 slot, but one can only imagine that the number 2 slot will be even better honor for your number 2 podcast of the year. I'm interested in how we started out. I want to see how we'll continue.
So we went from, talking about kind of bridging the gap between our maybe typecasts is the word that comes to mind. And I'm just going to immediately reverse all of that and say that Realms of Peril and Glory, Blood on the Clock Tower was my number 2 podcast.
Hold on. Okay. Now I have to refresh my memory because this is you. Okay. One thing that grabbed you this year, that put its hands around your neck and started to just throttle you was the board game, the tabletop role-playing game. Well, I wouldn't even know.
It's a social deduction game.
The game Blood on the Clock Tower.
Yes.
It's Mafia. It's Among Us, kind of. There's another word. I was like, werewolf. It was the other game I was trying to think of. But
these are all social deduction games.
Yeah, you got really into this game this year, so much so that you got really into podcasts about this game. Now, this podcast in particular, if I remember rightly, was kind of one of the better produced ones that you're just following people play the game, and you kind of get to enjoy the social deduction aspect and story aspect, right?
Yeah.
Am I on track here?
Yeah, so there's plenty of like YouTube channels that will do this with Blood on the Clock Tower where you can watch the group play. And one of the big things about Blood on the Clock Tower is that you can break off into these side conversations, so you can make like secret little schemes with only a couple other players instead of having to discuss everything at like a main table, like with Werewolf or something. And so On YouTube, you can just show people's faces to make it really clear, which side group you're kind of jumping back and forth between. That gets a lot more difficult in audio. So there's really very few audio format versions of Blood on the Clocktower gameplay, but I love a podcast and I love Blood on the Clocktower. So this was like the one place I found, because there are some other places where they would upload it and you can just listen along, and if you know people's voices well enough, you can like follow along or whatever. But this was the only place I found that they were making it to be a podcast intentionally, and they had narration between moving around between groups so that you could follow along, and they had audio design, and it's really, really well done, and I really loved that attention to detail and actually like really committing to being in this format, when sometimes, making a podcast can kind of be a secondary thought for other shows that are focusing on video. So I really loved this podcast. Also, they have really fun people playing. It's just good. It's a good time.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated because I think, as you're describing it, I'm thinking, wow, I feel like this podcast is kind of a product of also like D&D podcasts, and because they're both improvised storytelling, and it seems like that's kind of the angle here, is they're taking these different parts of like, okay, how do people make podcasts about D&D? They put in their like sound effects and like other parts, you know what I mean, to make it seem kind of like a cohesive story. And I think that kind of ancestral relationship there is really fascinating.
Yeah. There's definitely an overlap with tabletop RPG podcasting, which, is a space I'm also very much in. So this is just so my niche. It had to be in my top 3. They made this podcast for me. There's one of the main reasons I put this in my top 3 was because there's only, I believe, 7 or 8 episodes. I've listened to all of them. But
Whoa.
I just check that podcast so often because I want there to be more episodes so bad. No other podcast lives in my head of me wishing there was more like this one does.
That's so funny. And
yep.
We'll know why if you decide to, inevitably when you make your own Blood on the Clocktower podcast, we'll know what sparked it. It was this.
Yep, it was this.
Perfect. Speaking of sparks, you know what was burning bright in my heart this
Tell us
year?
what was burning bright in your heart, Sam.
The flames of revolution.
I'm
talking about Revolutions, the history podcast. This is my number 2 PODY podcast of the year. It was delightful. I really enjoyed it. Revolutions is a podcast, is a history podcast largely covering different historical revolutions from, the American Revolution to the English, the French, Russian Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, just a bunch of really fascinating periods in history where things got turned upside down and were really chaotic. And Mike Duncan, who runs the podcast, is I think a fantastic historian or popular historian, if you prefer. He's such a good storyteller and really presents these what can be kind of complicated narratives, things that happened in ways that are comprehensible, and also bring like characters to the forefront in a way that I think has a lot in common with, some of the audio dramas that we talk about on Podpodcastcast. I think it's absolutely fantastic podcast. It's we'll see if that's true. It might be my favorite history podcast. I definitely would recommend it to anybody that's interested in history. I really like its focus. I'm a little frightened by some of its longer seasons, like on the Russian Revolution, which is like 100-something episodes. But also, the reason that I could wrangle honor into reviewing it this year was because the most recent season, the Martian Revolution, which was, I have to say, a delight.
Yes.
In case anyone's not aware, there is yet to be a revolution on Mars. So it was a more of an audio drama, but again, it was told in the same like historical sense, which I think was really fun and delightful, and I really enjoyed. I think it's a great podcast. I think it's a wonderful history podcast, and if you like history, you should go listen to it.
Yeah. Revolutions was definitely in my honorable mentions because of, you said it, primarily I liked the fiction season about the Martian Revolution. I almost want to call it like speculative history because I think of speculative biology as a niche in fiction. Speculative biology being like, here's sort of how animals could exist, and then being like, here's history as seems most likely or extremely realistic for it to take place, and like portraying it in
Sure.
that way of like as if it's already real, which is
Right.
you know, it's a strange way to say it because all fiction is like, oh yes, this is the truth, but you know what I mean.
Right.
Presenting it in the same way that you would nonfiction, but it is all made up. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So you're right. This is absolutely speculative fiction. And it is interesting in that it's, you know, I talked about how this podcast brings characters to the forefront, which it does. But again, it's all talking about history, right? So it's, you're not hearing these characters talk, right? There's no dialogue or anything like that, right? And so kind of doing speculative fiction in this, like, you know, historical format is very interesting.
Yeah.
I agree. And is, it tickles the mind. I've been thinking about it,
It does.
you know, recently. And it's like, oh, man. What if, like, you know, we colonized Mars?
Yeah.
Maybe I should go to Mars? I don't know. It kind of sounds like it was terrible.
Yeah.
But they had fun hats. That's what I remember.
They had fun hats. Yeah. I just think this podcast in general has a level of thoroughness that is really impressive and makes it a really great listening experience, both in the fiction of being so thorough about all of the details you're making up to make it a realistic and cohesive story, and also, you know, just really thorough coverage of the actual history just made it really fascinating and also easy to follow along with and listen to. So this was definitely in my honorable mentions. I think you're very correct for listing it as number 2. And also, I knew you would. You love your revolutions.
I knew you would. I knew it.
Knew it.
Well, you knew me right. You knew me right. Great podcast. Love it. You should listen to it. You know a podcast you shouldn't listen to, though, Anna?
Yeah.
Our potties, our podcasts. Ew. There's yesterday's a stale podcast. I was trying to make it dynamic for you. I tried to keep you interested.
Yeah, you also said "ew" and it would be an O, but
well, that's why I started with an O. I said "ew," you know, like that's.
Oh,
that's it.
okay.
Ew,
I see.
Okay, I should start.
That's my bad.
Yeah, so these are our worst podcasts of the year. We didn't have that many bad podcasts. Because it's hard to want to listen to a lot of a bad podcast, something that you know is going to be bad.
Absolutely.
But we did have some stinkers this year. We had some that I'm like, this is not good. I don't like this. I don't like the way that I have to interact with this. It's not fun. I'm not into this at all. Honor, do you want to hit me with your POTTY?
Oh yeah. Do you want to guess what it is?
Yes, I know exactly what it is. I assume it's Joe Rogan.
It's Joe Rogan.
You hated that podcast. You hated that podcast to kind of a crazy degree.
I just really dislike it. And it's so popular.
It's very popular, and I think that's another reason that you dislike it. It's like, why do other people like this?
Yeah, that's why I keep harping on it, because I'm like, it's not like it's the most excruciating listening experience ever, but I am like, all of these people could be having a much better listening experience by going and finding a much better and more interesting podcast.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably true. Well, let's also take a little context of when we listen to this. Like, we listened to it during the 2024 election, right? So it was very political, which was, also felt like, oh, I don't know, man. I don't know if this is good. I don't know if I'm into this. But maybe it's not so much that way. Like, maybe you just don't have to hear Joe Rogan's thoughts on current events as much,
I kind of doubt it.
Yeah, no, I think that's kind of part of the appeal, right? And I agree with you. I think sometimes it's just like having this whole unedited podcast isn't good. I think of the episode I listened to him with Theo Vaughn, and Theo Vaughn just keeps going, I don't know, man. I'm just not feeling it today. I'm not funny. And like Joe has to keep restarting the conversation. He's like, no, man, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about something funny. And then Theo Vaughn's like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
So like, it is very, we talked a little bit earlier about how like podcasting is appealing to people because it's natural. Like, it's just how people talk. And that's a little bit what I've heard why people like Joe Rogan. But I think there's just a lot.
I just think there's so much better noise in the world. If you just need noise, there's so much better noise. Yeah. Like, so much.
Right. I agree with you.
There's so much great music. There's so many better people just talking podcasts. Especially if you're in it for just like sort of a background thing. There's much more sort of, passive and pleasant things to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you in the broad strokes. Like, I think there's better interview podcasts. Like the one I always reference is Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I think that's a great interview podcast. I think there's better comedy podcasts, even ones that are just by other big comedians, if that's what you're into. But, you're talking about just noise, and that is what some people listen to podcasts for, is just to listen to, like, noise. It doesn't really matter what people are talking about. And then it is just, I think, about finding your match, like the personality and people that you enjoy, whether that's, I don't know, the guys from Tiger Belly or the girls from Celebrity Memoir Book Club, which isn't called that anymore. I forgot what it's called. But, some people just kind of want that noise. And I guess Joe Rogan is that for a lot of people, but he definitely was not that for either of us.
No. Yeah, and I will definitely admit at least part of it is just like, that's not the vibe I'm looking for. If it's your vibe, then sure. But for me, bad podcasts. There just has been no other podcast. I would rather listen to any of the other podcasts that we reviewed than this one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And let's flush this potty down the drain. A squish. That's my flushing sound.
That was not a flushing sound, but maybe like a plunger.
You
I'm done talking about this.
My toilets are different than yours, okay? Well, I know you're on the edge of your seat, Honor. What could possibly be Sam's potty? The worst podcast. P-U, terrible, ya podcast. That's what potty stands for. And my potty for 2025? The telepathy tapes. I hated that podcast.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember the telepathy tapes, Honor? What do you mean?
I do. I remember you disliking them, but I don't remember you disliking them this much. So that's interesting to me.
It's, I think, probably the worst podcast we've ever listened to on this, or we've ever reviewed. It's awful. Because it's, okay. The telepathy tapes, just to catch people up. The telepathy tapes is a podcast, which is supposed to be like a documentary podcast, but about this belief that some like nonverbal autistic children have telepathic abilities, right?
Yes.
There's all like some other spiritual plane they can tap into and stuff. And it was really bad. Well, and the reason I really disliked it is because, so one of the things we talked about this year was about, what did we call it? Information goop.
I think we called it the weird soup.
The weird soup. Thank you, Anna.
Yeah, the weird soup. Scientific term.
That is scientific term. That's in the literature for sure.
Yeah.
And basically what we were trying to describe, and this relates back to Joe Rogan, especially during the time of the election, was, we're in this information age, right? There's so much information out there. And podcasting is a medium that you and me both really like. And it's a really intimate medium, right? You're getting people's thoughts beamed right into your head,
Yeah. It's also really accessible for people to make whatever they want.
Yes, right, for sure. So it just feels really weird when people are telling you things that you think is like not true, right? Because the whole premise of this podcast is crazy. I just, for the record, I don't think anyone has telepathic abilities, right? But you're listening to this person for like 10 to 8 episodes tell you about these experiments that they ran, which obviously you can't see, but these experiments that they ran, but you're just being told this in a really intimate way, which makes you think, man, is this real? And I hated that. I hated that so much.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And there's a season 2. There's a season 2 out.
Oh, I forgot about that, because that wasn't out when we listened to it.
No, it just came out, I think.
Which I assume you have not listened to it. I haven't. I have no idea what the current state of the telepathy tapes is.
I will not go back and listen to it. In the crazy world where it's true that somehow a group of people have developed telepathic abilities, I'll find out in like 20 years. You know what I mean? Like, if they're going to change the world, it'll happen. And I'll be like, oh, well, I guess I was wrong when I reviewed that podcast. But in the reality that's real and is actually going to happen, I'm going to forget about it and it's going to be fine because it's a crazy premise for a podcast. And it's not even, it's a crazy premise, an idea. And it was really strange to listen to so much of it and also, be questioning it the whole time, being like, did this really happen? Is this real? Because that would be extraordinary. And I think my answer is no.
Yeah.
Didn't like it. Flushing that one down the drain. Put it down there. Whoosh. I really got to work on my flushing noises. All right, Honor. We've come to it. It's a big moment. Hold your applause, audience. But do drum roll. It's like what I should
drum
say.
roll.
Honor, your number one podcast of the year is...
My podcast of the year is Dimension 20, which I don't think is surprising at all.
No. I was really I was going to make a much bigger reaction.
Yeah, I saw it die on your face.
Yeah, I was just like... Well, because what was your one for last year? Was that also it?
No... Last year was... Gosh, what was it last year? I think it was Serial.
That's crazy. Dimension 20, I think, might be the most reviewed show on Podpodcastcast.
Yes, easily.
Because you have reviewed, what have we gone through, 4, 5 seasons?
Yeah, we've gone through at least 4 seasons. We've gone through, I can list them. Court of Fey and Flowers, Never Stop Blowing Up, Misfits and Magic. Justice actually reviewed The Unsleeping City. Then... Recently I was thinking about reviewing another season, but I did not.
The Restraint You Show is immeasurable. You love... is this easily your favorite D&D podcast?
I don't know if it necessarily is, because one of my honorable mentions that I thought you would be very surprised that it didn't make it into my top 3 is Critical Role. It's been brought up on so many of the recent episodes where Critical Role is not the podcast we're reviewing, but I'm talking about it.
It's a big podcast.
I love Calamity, which we reviewed this year, so I almost put Calamity up there, but that's an honorable mentions.
I forgot we did that.
So Critical Role I also listen to a lot, which that's a lot of hours. You gotta love it if you're gonna listen. But Dimension 20 I listen to even more. I really love the anthology format of it, where they are doing different things. There's different players moving in and out. There's different DMs, even if Brendan Lee Mulligan is usually the DM. I love all the different stories that they tell. I just think it's really great. And yeah, I just spent so much time listening to it and talking about it on the podcast this year that it felt like I really couldn't give the spot to anything else. It would have felt unfair.
I mean, that's only reasonable. Yeah, I mean, I think what appeals to me about Dimension 20, not that I've listened to it, but as opposed to Critical Role, which is, I would say, Critical Role, which is like the biggest D&D podcast, Dimension 20, you're not locked into the same story for the next 200 hours, Yeah. It's like, all right, we'll tell this story for, I don't know, probably a tenth of that time.
Yeah.
And then we'll move on. We'll get to talk about something else, right? Because,
exactly.
D&D is fun. It's cool, but there's so much space there in Dungeons & Dragons to explore other kinds of stories. And I think that's a particular advantage of this podcast is to be like, let's do this. We're going to do this thing for a little bit, and then we're going to do this. It's going to be a new thing. And, you can explore all these kinds of different avenues for that. And then also... I know the people that are on the podcast. Brendan Lee Mulligan DM'd Critical Role's Calamity little short adventure. He did a great job. I've heard the other people that are on Dimension 20. They're very funny. So I can see how this is a really solid podcast for you.
Yeah, it's really great. And I love variety in the tabletop RPG space. I watch a lot of stuff, listen to a lot of stuff. And so I do love that they also... Even though they started as a D&D podcast, they aren't super locked into even that. They try out other systems. They have made their own system for Never Stop Blowing Up, which I think is just that creativity goes through the whole podcast where they're, like you said, they're always ready to try something new. And so it keeps things really fun and really fresh and really original. And it's awesome.
And I also think it delivers that volume that you really like as a big pod head. So I think that I see how this is a big podcast for, I would say almost a defining honor podcast, if one is to imagine what an honor podcast is like.
Absolutely. I didn't even talk about yet the most recent campaign of theirs that I listened to, just wrapped up 20 episodes. They were around 2 to 3 hours an episode. Cloudward Ho, really good. I'll review it at some point, but for as much as I've talked about this podcast on our podcast, there's even more that I've listened to.
Absolutely. And it's only natural.
Yep. But Sam.
Yes?
What's your potty?
My podcast of the year?
Your podcast of the year. I've told you mine.
That's
only
fair.
fair.
We got to swap. Before I tell you my podcast of the year, I failed to ask you, but I'm going to say my honorable mentions, which include New Heights with the Kelsey brothers, the football boys. That was a fun podcast for me to dive into because it's a talk podcast, but it's a little different. I've been doing a lot of celebrity podcasts, but they were kind of funny and interesting, and also it was more sports than I usually consume, so that was cool.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that podcast. I also really enjoyed the Chrisley Confessions from this summer, which is a podcast.
That's really funny.
Yeah, about a former Christian influencer and his wife who went to prison and then got out of prison. And I see why he was an influencer, had a reality TV show, because just very entertaining people. Yeah. And then I mentioned some of my other honorable mentions, like Mall Walkin', great show. So a lot of good podcasts this year, but there can be only one podcast of the year.
What is it?
Drum roll, please.
I'm rolling my drums.
It's The Rest is History, which is a podcast I reviewed earlier this year in February.
Yeah.
And, I didn't realize that I reviewed it in February because I've been listening to it all year. That's
dedication, especially from you.
True. I'm non-committal.
Yes.
In my podcasts, I'll be with a podcast for a week, dump them. I'll find a new one, But I was thinking of, what is the podcast that I've really liked the most this year? And I think we've reviewed a lot of podcasts, but a lot of them for me were that one was just fine. It's okay. Good Hang with Amy Poehler is a good show, but it's okay. It's not pinnacle for me. But Rest is History, since I've tried it, has just absolutely broken into my rotation. And I love listening to it. It's really good stories told really well about interesting things. I love it. It's so fascinating. My poor girlfriend has to hear me talk about, the Queen Elizabeth for 3 hours straight because I'm but no, it's so fascinating.
Because her podcast.
She was the third in line. And it's just, absolutely such fascinating stuff. Makes me think, man, should I become a historian? Is this a career change I need to make?
Could be.
It could be because I just find myself really loving these stories and, hearing about the historical controversies. Oh, this is what one historian said. This is what another historian said, which I just find is so fun and is kind of, I said about Dimension 20 for you, it delivers that volume that you want out of, your D&D podcast. For me, it has a tremendous volume, which is advantageous because it's a volume of good stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Audio dramas just have a hard time producing a large amount of them because it takes a lot of work. And I like audio dramas. We both like audio dramas. And so bringing in those stories that are real, which is to me another added layer of interest, and to just be able to about any time I want to, just be oh, what's the new, thing on the street? It's about Byzantium. Sick. I'm in,
Yeah.
And it's just utterly delightful. And the co-hosts, Tom and Dominic, just wonderful British men in their 50s, which is just an absolute delight to hear them both, talk about things and be he absolutely disgraced himself with this one. He killed an Englishman. Oh, no. He was
so funny.
He was a Francophile. Oh, no. That's not what either of them sound like, but you get the picture.
That's funny. I want that podcast.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'll make a parody podcast just for you, Otter.
Yeah, thank you.
And also, I think that my opinions as a reviewer are rock solid, and that's evidenced by the fact that The Rest is History is Apple Podcast of the Year. So me, and the Apple Corporation, we're on the same wavelength. So I'm just saying.
And that's the metric of success.
It's true. I'm right. Steve Jobs says so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So absolutely a fantastic podcast. And there's a lot of podcasts I listen for Podpodcastcast that I don't listen to again, but The Rest of History is not one of them. And I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, no, that's your pod.
It's my pod. That's my podcast of the year. The best podcast, objectively.
Yeah.
Wow, Honor, that's a lot of podcasts we just talked about. A lot of really good podcasts.
A lot of podcasts. Do you want to know how many podcasts we've talked about through our entire show?
I do. Let's move into kind of giving our year in review. You know, we've talked about the best podcasts, but let's talk about what's really the best podcast.
Yeah, the real poddy.
Yeah, Honor, how many podcasts have we reviewed so far in about the roughly 2.5 years we've been talking pods?
Yeah. So this is a little difficult to try to put into a number. You'd think we could just take, there's one podcast for every book club that we've done, and there's 3 for every round table. For the most part, This is true, which also we have done 40 episodes now. This will be our technically 42nd episode, but that includes 2 PODY Awards. So we've done 20 of each format, which we're very close to 80 podcasts.
Wow.
But there have been some episodes where we might have repeat podcasts because, especially if a guest will bring a podcast on and then we're like, that sounds interesting, we should review that for a book club. We've done that a couple of times. We have also, though, had some guests who brought on multiple podcasts. And then there's the Jasper episode where arguably he didn't review any podcasts.
No, he brought on podcasts he thought sounded interesting.
He brought on, I believe, 3 or 4 podcasts that he thought sounded good, but I felt like those couldn't count as reviews.
So you were really kind of getting in the trenches, digging up the hard numbers.
Oh yeah. I looked through all of our episodes, and I might have missed some, but I believe that puts us at 79 podcasts reviewed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We've talked about so many freaking podcasts.
We've talked about a lot of podcasts. If you think about how many podcasts 79 shows is, that's just a lot of time, if nothing else. It's a lot of time
that we've spent listening to podcasts. I would love all the analytics of that. I would love to see a breakdown of, like, how many of those are about Dungeons and Dragons.
I thought about getting that statistic, but even that was difficult because technically in my number I counted, because generally with some of the big Dungeons and Dragons podcasts like Dimension 20 and Critical Role, we'll break those up by campaign because those are so different a lot of the time. So I counted each of those as individual podcasts, but like I said, I believe we've reviewed 4 seasons of Dimension 20. We've reviewed Critical Role technically 3 times now, because I reviewed mainly the 2nd season early on. We reviewed Calamity, and then recently Allison reviewed the 4th season, which is ongoing. Yeah. So that's at least 7. I know that the D&D episode with Veneer, that's 2 more, because you and Veneer both had an additional D&D podcast. Mine was Dimension 20. So that's at least 9 times we have reviewed a D&D podcast, and that's just off the top of my head.
So we're already over 10%.
Yeah.
Like easily over 10%. Yeah, I mean, we talk about D&D a lot. But there's a lot of podcasts that we've talked. 79 is so very wild to me. And
it's a lot.
I hope people have got some value out of that.
Yeah,
out of all
surely.
Right. Out of the hours I spent in listening to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, you'll hear us talk about a pod that will be interesting at least a little bit, you know?
Sure. If nothing else.
Yeah.
If this is your first Podpodcastcast episode, there's a lot that you could binge. That'd be crazy. It'd be crazy if this is their first episode, and they're like, hold on, I'm listening all the way through.
Yeah, it's not a bad place to start, because then, you know, you've heard our best podcasts. You could go listen to our more in-depth episodes about those podcasts. Maybe this is the starting point. Everyone, start here. Start with the Second Annual PODY.
It's canon. It's the official starting point.
Yep.
That's a fantastic statistic, Honor, and I appreciate you digging in and uncovering that.
Yeah.
Some other headline stats for this year. Well, some minor stats that I just thought were interesting. Speaking of Joe Rogan, on Spotify, that's the number 1 podcast that people listening to our show also listen to.
Which is crazy to me.
Yeah, it feels real weird.
Just from, I think it has to be like a majority of our listeners, but not necessarily the people that we've talked to who have listened to a lot of our show. Because I feel like
Maybe.
a Joe Rogan listener feels pretty likely to dip their toes into a podcast about podcasts, but no one else I've talked to who listens to our show has ever mentioned listening to Joe Rogan.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at the statistic right now.
Yeah.
Let's see. Is it? I don't know. I don't know if it's because Spotify gave us our fans this year, which is the people that have listened to us a lot. And it says that these are the shows that our fans are watching. So, I mean, maybe
there's
the overlap there.
That's true.
Because it's a really strange list of podcasts that other people are listening to from related Podpodcastcast, which is Joe Rogan, Mark Naden, I don't know what that is, the Wrestle Talk podcast, Diary of a CEO, and Stuff They Don't Want You to Know.
Yep.
So I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Also, another little statistic that I thought was kind of cute and funny is for this year, again on Spotify, our top countries by listen.
Yeah.
Which, predictably, number 1 is the United States. But Honor, could you guess number 2?
Well, I've already seen it, and I am really happy about it, but I wouldn't have guessed it, no. Because I also don't think it's ever come up, because we've mentioned this statistic before, and this was never the country listed as number 2.
Yeah, that is true. And I still don't think it's our number 2 overall, but apparently it's our number 2 for Spotify for this year, which is Egypt. I don't know why, but the Egyptians, big fans of the pod. God bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes the U.S., Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, and Serbia are our top 5, which is really funny. I don't like. Who's the one Serbian guy who tuned into Podpodcastcast, and what did he think? If you're that Serb, please let us know. I would
love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. But some bigger statistics. This year, we had a really big podcast episode. So our biggest episode for this past year was Good Hang with Amy Poehler, which did better than all of our other episodes by a huge margin. So the top episode is Good Hang with Amy Poehler with 3,000 listens. And this is very strange because our second top episode has 200 listens. So we're like, what's up with this? Mm-hmm. Apparently, Amy Poehler, and I don't know if she's changed it or not, but at the time when we published this episode, had not put her podcast on Amazon Prime. And so everybody that looks up her podcast on Amazon Prime just comes straight to us, baby. Let's go.
Oh, yeah. Which also makes me think if you, ask Alexa to play it or something, does it just play our podcast?
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there, but that was big for us. So thank you, Amy Poehler, for leaving a gap in the market. Podpodcastcast, we'll weasel in anyway that you let us.
Oh, yeah.
That's just scientifically true. Yeah, so a good year for Podpodcastcast.
Yeah.
We had some big eps. We had some big debates.
Yes.
And discussions. We talked about, again, the weird information soup.
Yeah.
That we felt kind of earlier in the year. That was a big thing that we talked about for a while. We also kind of got into more popular podcasts.
Yeah.
Talked about the Kelsey Brothers podcast.
Mm-hmm.
New Heights. And I think I do want to say, and I'm pretty sure that this is true, that the reason that Taylor Swift went on that podcast is because we reviewed it. And I think that's why they're getting married.
No, that's true.
I think that's scientifically true.
We did that.
Yeah, we talked about that and the Amy Poehler podcast. So we kind of talked about some bigger podcasts like the Huberman Lab. Mm-hmm. I wanted to see what the kids are listening to. So
that's what the kids are listening to?
They want to know how to get Booty by Brett. They want to know how to subscribe. I want you to know that, if you haven't listened to that episode, listener, it's okay. But you can find out. I reviewed that episode, and my girlfriend just has nonstop been teasing me about Booty by Brett. She's like, I don't know how you got into this Booty by Brett. I was like, to be clear, it was on the podcast. I'm not getting a booty by Brett. That's just the guy who's on the podcast.
Funny.
But still, yeah. So we've been listening to some bigger pods of kind of forced honor you to come with me out of the warm seclusion of audio dramas into the cold, dark light of
my little indie shows.
Into major podcasts, which has also been fun, and get to see some other kinds of podcasts that you don't usually get to see. So yeah, I would say 2025, year of the pod. I'm gonna claim that.
Year of the pod. Yeah.
I might have said that last year. Who knows?
I also reviewed, I would say by far our smallest podcast, which I think had less than 10 reviews. So we've really gone through the whole spectrum this year. We've gone big, we've gone small.
We basically know all podcasts.
I would say we probably know all podcasts.
The most comprehensive knowledge of podcasts. And I expect to probably be called up, whenever there's a podcast-related disaster in the news, I expect to be called up by, Fox, MSNBC, CNN. They're going to, they'll call us up and they'll be like, what do you think about podcasts? And we'll be like, well, we're experts in this field, so thank you for contacting us.
I have, this could be called hubris, but I have finally reached a point where people will make a joke about like, oh, you're an expert on podcasts. And I just think about how many podcasts I've listened to and reviewed. And I go, you know what? Compared to most people, yeah, I'm probably in like the 99th percentile of like people who know podcasts. I think most other people haven't listened to even close to 79 podcasts.
It's a lot of pods. Yeah, no, I think give me 2 more PODY Awards and then I'll say I'm an expert.
Okay.
I still feel like, because there's golly gosh, I mean,
there are
so many dang pods.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Telepathy Tapes has a new season. Gosh, they're doing this like another celebrity has another gosh darn diggly dang podcast.
Yeah.
I can't keep up. But eventually I'll know all.
Eventually we will know all.
My brain will shrink, my ears will increase, and I will hear actually all information that is being spoken into existence.
Yeah. Which is basically telepathy if you think about it.
Dude, we got to move off this. I can't even think about that podcast anymore. It makes me so mad.
Yeah.
Well, listener, thank you for staying with us this year and listening to what we've got today. We appreciate you very much. And if this show is at all interesting or valuable to you, let us know. You can email us at podpodcastcastpod@gmail.com. We'll read off your email on the air. You can also leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're doing it. Leave us a review. We'd love to know your thoughts, and it helps other people find the show, which is super valuable for us, so we appreciate that as well. And you can follow the podcast. That's the last call to action I'm going to give you. Follow it. You'll know when we're...
If you have any podcast that we could review that you think we should check out to truly reach expert level in the upcoming year, we'd also love to hear that.
Let us know how we can level up. Please.
Yes.
Please.
This is our goal.
We'll transcend into a truly and only audio plane of existence.
That does sound awesome.
I think that's what happens when we listen to 100 pods. I mean, that's just my suspicion. You know what I think?
What do you think?
I think, Honor, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you podding with me today on this the Second Annual PODY Awards.
And I appreciate you for dragging me into as many podcasts as you have, and for coming along kicking and screaming to my podcasts.
It's always scary when that happens. But listener, if you want to know when that happens for the next time, tune in. We'll see you in just a little while. Yeah. But until then, thanks for listening. Have a merry rest of the year.
Merry holidays.